You know, it's a shame that Bloodborne is trapped on the PS4 still with absolutely no hope of ever getting it off of there, short of collecting all the Dragon Balls and shoving them directly up Sony's. Hey, how you doing? I'm Van. Welcome to the channel. Before we go anywhere else, subscribe. I'm almost at 1,000, and I really want to hit 1,000 by the end of the year. Like, it'd be awesome. It'd be fantastic. I would love you for at least 15 minutes, and I mean, I do love hot dads. Myself included, and Max. But Bloodborne's my favorite game on the PS4, and one of my favorite games of all time. It was my first introduction to the Soulsborne series. I started with Bloodborne, and I still feel the influence in it, even whenever I'm playing Elden Ring. I still don't use shields, I still play hyper-aggressively, and I still die way more often than I probably should. I really do think Bloodborne is FromSoft's best standalone game. And unfortunately, due to the fact that Bloodborne's stuck on the PS4 for the foreseeable future, eventually we're going to stop being able to play it, because eventually we're going to run out of PS4s. I say that. I'm pretty sure they're still making the damn things, because they sell like hotcakes even now, because the PS5's still decently expensive. But Bloodborne's probably the only real reason most people still even turn on their PS4, unless they're using it for like Netflix or YouTube or something like that. Pretty much every other console exclusive at this point has been ported to either PC, Xbox, Switch, something else, but not Bloodborne. And do you know why? It's because Sony doesn't like money. They don't like making good business decisions here recently either. After the Helldivers fiasco, and then I think there was another game directly after that that did the exact same thing. I don't really know what's going on there at Sony HQ. I can only imagine it's just them making bad business decisions and thinking that everybody's just going to ignore them. But that's a very long-winded way to say I had an idea that was birthed from my mind vagina a few hours ago, and I decided to make a video about it. I have a few bullet points here, and that's about the only thing that I actually wrote down. I just want to complain about some of the enemies in Bloodborne, because Bloodborne has some phenomenal enemy design, and crazy enemy variety. You'll never run out of things to hit really hard whenever you're running around in Bloodborne. You'll never run out of enemies to kill in new and exciting ways. But with such a large enemy variety and such a large group of enemies to pull from, there's bound to be a few duds. And then, yeah. Some of those on my list are on there not just because they're bad enemies, but because I don't like them. And you may find a problem with that, but I don't really care because this is my list. And as far as I'm concerned, this is objective fact in my world. You are free to disagree, of course. Just know that to me, you're wrong. I understand that everybody's going to have a different opinion of a game and a different opinion of the things within the game. I know that, and I respect that. And if any of my entries give you a particularly strong sense of the ick, you don't feel that it's right, you feel as if the universe has decided that that was wrong and you need to let me be aware, please do. I would love to hear from you in the comments. But with that out of the way, please subscribe, and let's start talking about these pieces of fucking garbage. We're going to start with something that I really consider more of an honorable mention, but I felt the need to mention it anyway, because if you've played any Souls game, any of them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And that's the dogs. There's a few different types of dogs in Bloodborne, and I'm just going to throw them all into this category because they're all the same enemy with a different coat of paint splashed on them. What makes the dogs particularly infuriating in Souls games, and by extension, Bloodborne: 1, they're fast, 2, they're hard to hit, and 3, they teleport. Yes, you heard me right, the dogs in Souls games teleport. That's how they stay on your butt. That's how they stay nipping at your heels. Because while you're running, the camera is not on them, and they teleport behind you in short, rapid successions. That's why sometimes you see them falling from the sky and bumping you and knocking you out of your groove. And then they start biting you and ripping your chunks out, and it's just like, dude, let me go. Let me leave. Let me be free. But no, these dogs have to chase you down, they have to make you feel worthless, and they have to give you this experience right here. Fuck. Everybody's experienced that exact moment at least once, and if you're saying that it's only once, you're lying to me. But again, this is not one specific enemy, this is all dogs. So we're going to get a little more specific from this point going forward. I just felt the need to address the elephant in the room, so to speak. Getting a little more specific here, but not quite down to just one enemy per entry, we have entry number 9. The Eyeball Collectors, or the Witches of Hemwick, considering they are just a named variant. I have no issues with the long, tall shadow people that the Witches of Hemwick summon during their boss fight. That's not really what my concern is, especially whenever you can actually just cheese that out by getting rid of all of your insight before entering that fight. and then they just can't summon them, which is fun, but then it just makes that whole boss fight feel kind of pointless, and just like you're running around playing hide and seek with these ladies, you know? But I have a few reasons to include them here. First and foremost, they're not inspired in any way. I know, that's a weird thing to start with, but these enemies don't really stand out in any way. Whenever you see an eyeball collector out there in the open, you don't think, oh, that's a significant enemy. That's something that you could turn into a boss. But they do that anyway, and of course, you know, there's magic and stuff thrown in, but the magic in Bloodborne is relatively low-key, so it makes them disappointing. The eyeball collectors themselves are weak, drop bad loot, drop mediocre echoes at best, and tend to just hide in corners and wait for you to walk around them so they can jump out and pull your eyes out with a rusty spoon. And the worst part about that is they grapple you for a long time. Like, you're held there for like a solid 5 seconds as they're slowly just like scooping like a grapefruit. Suddenly you realize you've taken 70% of your health from this enemy who's just kind of a bitch. It's a relatively forgettable enemy, to be sure, but I don't like it. Mostly because I like my eyeballs. I want them to stay right where they are, because I need them for visual things. Oh, and of course, every once in a while you'll be in the middle of fighting one, and then suddenly they just whip out that grab out of nowhere with like just 0 frames of startup animation, and then they just kill you. Yeah, just because they felt like it. They're just showing you that the power that they normally throw at you is just because they feel sorry for you, and they could kill you whenever they wanted to, just like everything else in this game. The celestial larvae are ugly. I mean, everything in Bloodborne's kind of ugly. If it's not majestically ugly, it's just kind of crunchy ugly, and the celestial larvae fall more under the crunchy ugly. Some of the same issues with the witches will kind of permeate throughout the rest of this video, off and on. Mediocre echo drops, not fun to fight, uninspired moveset, and annoying insta-kill move. In the case of the celestial larvae, if they touch you, you start building up frenzy. There are a lot of different things in Bloodborne that actually build the frenzy meter for you. However, the reason I have the celestial larvae here, and I mentioned the frenzy with them, is because they come in swarms most of the time. And if one of them, so much as touches you, that's 50% frenzy. If another one touches you, it's another 50% frenzy. And guess what? There went 70% of your health. That's the number that I go to by default, because it feels like everything that goes for an insta-kill kind of just does 70 to 80% of your health. And frenzy in particular is really frustrating because it does just I'm sorry, I choked on my snap, apparently. The celestial larvae also have a problem being that they are very small. They are very tiny, and that makes them hard to hit with certain weapons because of their low center of gravity. It's the Yoda effect from Soul Calibur 4, where he's overpowered solely because you can't touch the little bugger. Did I just say bugger? Why did I say bugger? Anyway, yeah, I don't like him. The beast-possessed soul is an enemy I wanted to like. By design, by even its attacks that it does use, it's actually a really unique enemy. You can find one without entering the Chalice dungeons, and finding this one gives it a sense of uniqueness and like, where is this? Where's this coming from? Are there more of them? Why did the one that I found have a rune? Why was he a weak little bitch? Maybe, just maybe, there will be more of them and they'll do better. And yes, there are more of them, all of which are in the Chalice dungeons, all of which are bosses, except for maybe like 1 or 2, and they're all disappointing. They're all placeholder enemies. What's a placeholder enemy, you ask? Well, thank you. Thank you for extending the length of this video a little bit for me. Placeholder enemy is an enemy that they have put in a place without really completing them. The beast-possessed soul looks good and has some unique attacks utilizing fire. That is all. In a game that requires you to have high mobility and high attack, it doesn't really have either, not dealing a significant amount of damage with really anything that it does, and definitely not moving fast enough to be much of a threat. On top of a lot of really easily parryable attacks, mediocre health at best, it just doesn't really feel fun to fight because it just stands there most of the time.
He is an idiot. We have purposely trained him wrong, as a joke.
You can generally just kind of slowly walk around it, and it will just cycle. It may jump back, but then it's just going to slowly walk towards you again, like it's threatening, like it's the Terminator. But it's not. It's not the Terminator. At absolute best, it's RoboCop before they put the suit on him, you know? I don't mean just like a cop either. I mean like the bundle of nerves that was slapped into the RoboCop suit. I really did debate putting the Snatchers on this list, but given the amount of difficulty that they present to new players, myself included whenever I first started playing the game, I also ended up putting them a little higher than I thought I was going to, for the sake of the snatching, from which they get their name. The first time you run into a snatcher within the game, if it kills you, it will take you to an area by the name of Hypogean Jail. The Hypogean Jail sucks. Later on, whenever you've gotten used to the game and you know how enemies work and you know how, to parry everything, the Hypogean Jail is a great place to gain a lot of early levels. But let me tell you, that panic the first time that you show up in Hypogean Jail and you can't go back to your lantern, oh my god, it's scary. They're particularly annoying to newer players because the snatchers have those same long wind-up animations that a lot of other enemies have, giving you opportunity to parry. If you have not gotten used to the parry system, though, every one of their attacks will do that 70% that I mentioned earlier, or at least 50 with a casual swipe of their backhand. But then, once you get them down to about half, they enter a transformed state where they become angry and start smashing everything in their general vicinity, becoming faster, more aggressive, and just better overall. Coupled with the fact that I think whenever they transport you, they put you in that same brown duffel bag, and even if they empty it out, it looks heavy, and it looks meaty, which means there's probably some dead stuff in there. There's probably some corpses in there. We don't want to share our space with those. That sounds stinky, and it sounds like a great way to get really, really sick. I don't like to imagine myself in a corpse bag, to be perfectly honest. That's a lot of my issue with it. If somebody asked me within the next 10 years where I saw myself, it would not be corpse bag. Ever, for any reason. And yet, I keep ending up in one every single time I play this game because these snatchers will still body me. The Canehurst servants by themselves are not a particularly egregiously bad enemy. Particularly egregiously. That doesn't feel right, but we're gonna roll with it. They're small, unassuming little enemies kind of scattered throughout Canehurst. And at first glance, there's not really a whole lot to be, bothered by. But then you find the ones that are holding the Rider Palash, or whatever weapon that they're using that's the enemy equivalent of it, and they will dart around and stab you repeatedly while shooting you and doing a crazy amount of damage for the size that they are. Typically, they won't kill you on their own. Canehurst is a battle of stamina, a battle of will, and a battle of resource conservation, especially if you go there at the level you're supposed to. There are very few blood vials scattered around Canehurst Castle, and some of the few that you can get are dropped by these Canehurst servants. Yeah, but then you get into the deeper reaches of Canehurst, and there ends up being about 9 or 10 scattered throughout a room, some shooting darts that agitate ghosts, which will then slit your throat. I hate these flies. I hate them. They're all up in my business. Do y'all mind? It's those corpse bag flies, I'm telling you. But the Canehurst servants feel really designed to whittle you down little by little. By whittle. And, as mentioned with some of the other enemies, they just don't drop very good echoes. They aren't worth killing if you're not trying to farm blood vials, and most of the time you're not. You're making a mad dash through Canehurst in hopes that they don't actually hit you. Because once they hit you, it's all over. They're gonna stab you repeatedly, and all the other enemies are gonna show up and fuck your day up. I gotta stop cussing so much. YouTube doesn't like that. I like cussing, though. I just don't like how brain suckers sound. There's a wet schlorp that I associate with brain suckers that really makes me cringe. It gives me that little, that ick in the bottom of my spine that kind of crawls up. And I just don't like the brain suckers. Beyond that schlorping noise that they make, though, the brain suckers themselves are actually a really agitating enemy to deal with, primarily because they will steal your insight. Alternatively, you may want to lose some insight so certain enemies lose some of their more difficult to deal with attacks. But most of the time, you're trying to keep that insight. You're trying to hold on to it because it's a form of currency. It's a form of progression for your character. Having more insight allows your character to see and experience more things within the world of Yharnam because they are more aware of the world around them. Once your insight gets to a certain point, the various amygdala that are hanging on the cathedrals and the walls all over Yharnam, even if they have not been made visible by the blood moon yet, you'll still be able to see them once you reach a certain amount of insight. But not if you keep fucking with the brain suckers. What's more, they're hard to kill, being resistant to a lot of different damage types, and also having a propensity. But they also have a propensity for stun-locking you by shooting these little balls of arcane energy that stun you in place. They put you in a little ring, and they walk up to you and they schlorp your brains out. You stand back up, and they'll do it again, except it'll come up from the ground, and you better hope you dodged in time or else you're stuck again, and you're dead this time. That's just how the game's played. You know, the Blood Licker's got some mad hops, but that's about the only good thing that I can say about them. I like watching them jump around like giant little bunny fleas, but they're also ugly and gross and stupid. Blood Lickers are another enemy that are introduced within Castle Cainhurst. They do come back, of course, throughout the Chalice dungeons. Every enemy's in the Chalice dungeon somewhere if you look long enough, but they also return in the DLC, in that giant river of blood. I'm not talking about those specifically, I'm just talking about the Blood Lickers in general. I just want to make it clear that these enemies are encountered in more areas than just Cainhurst. Cainhurst is not the only problem, it's just the source of a lot of problems. But the Blood Lickers are tanky, they're hard to stagger, and they do a lot of damage. They can also spit blood on you, which builds up rapid poison, I believe, while simultaneously being really fast and just difficult to pin down. All of that together would be bad enough on its own, but they travel in herds. There's always a few of them together. You don't just find one by itself, and if you do, it's a one-time thing. The large majority tend to have others around them, so if you see one, you can bet there's probably at least 4 or 5 others, and you're going to be pulling each of them individually to kill them one by one, in hopes that the others have absolutely no idea what you're doing, and you don't have to fight all 5 of them, all 6 of them, all 7 of them at once. There's also a really fat one that exists in Cainhurst. I don't know what the lore is on that one, unless it's just fat because it gorged on the blood of all the people in Cainhurst, but we don't get context for it. He's just fat. Pop him, blood goes everywhere, and you get a special little bit of cold blood. It's weird. It may surprise some of you to find the Winter Lantern at number 2 instead of number 1, but to be perfectly honest, I don't have a huge amount of problem with the Winter Lanterns. Most of what they do is really easy to avoid, and they're placed primarily in areas that don't directly hinder your progress because they tend to move, pace back and forth, provide cover for you to hide from their frenzy gaze with. That said, if they do see you with their frenzy gaze, I hope you're ready to die. I mentioned frenzy earlier with the celestial larva. The thing that makes the Winter Lantern's frenzy way more annoying and way more something that people have issues with is twofold. First and foremost, she inflicts frenzy by looking at you. Not by being close to you, not by attacking you, not by even breathing on you, but simply turning her gaze in your general direction will start building your frenzy meter. That would be bad enough on its own, but then it damages you before it frenzies you as well. Little spikes start stabbing into your body as you're looking at her, and little chunks of health start dropping with each one of them. It's not really a tremendous amount of damage, of course. You'll die, though. You will die. Because the point of it isn't to kill you on its own, it is to allow the frenzy to do it for her. I imagine for a lot of people, they also kind of trigger some weird phobia of some kind. Maybe not, like, I don't think it's like trypophobia or anything like that, because it's similar to, but like not the same. But they're just hard to look at. There's a lot going on in this area right here. I hit my mic. There's a lot going on in this area right here for the Winter Lanterns. And so it becomes a matter of, oh, do I really want to look at her? Do I really want to deal with that? Or do I just want to sprint past her and take some sedatives whenever I'm in a safe space? They are usually worth killing. They are typically a pretty valuable enemy in terms of echoes. And they could be a lot worse. They could be faster. They could be more aggressive. They could have more health. They could be bigger. All of these things are possibilities that From probably toyed with and then decided that it was a little unfair for it to have more than just the frenzy gaze. So what could be worse than the Winter Lantern? It's the hateful maggots. Now I know what you're thinking. That's dumb as hell. How are these worse than the Winter Lanterns? Well, let me educate you, my good friend. Let me paint you a little picture here. The hateful maggots are rare. You only find them in a few select locations, one of them, of course, being Cainhurst. They're so unusual and so difficult to run into that I tend to forget that they even exist in the game, until suddenly I'm taking damage from the ground and I have no real idea what's happening, but then I look and there's these little tiny little worms that are just flopping around and hit me in the shins but then I realize I can't hit the bastards. They're small, we mentioned that with the larva earlier as well, so that makes them difficult to hit. But then, even once you do manage to land a blow on them, they resist every single damage type that I've ever thrown in their general direction. I don't know what their skin is made out of, being that they are hateful maggots, but I can only assume that whatever it is either made of pure hate or pure maggot, and whichever one that is resistant to much. But I want to give a special shout out to the Canehurst hateful maggots. Hateful maggots are maggot colored, and the area around Canehurst is snow covered. Now, I don't know how much you know about a maggot, but the natural coloration of a maggot is actually pretty similar to that of the natural coloration of snow. So when you do encounter these maggots within Canehurst, or just outside of Canehurst, on the grounds of Canehurst, when you do encounter them, they're hard to see. And I know I already said that they're kind of hard to see on account of their size and relatively unassuming stature, and instead of dying like they should, they instead take their hate out on you. They don't give you much in echoes, their drops are not very good at all, and they don't ever guard anything specific or important. They're not blocking any paths, they're not hiding any particularly valuable treasure you can't just run past them and grab, and they're not fun to fight. But how does that make them worse than the Winter Lantern? I'm just going to give like a hypothetical here, because hypothetically, somewhere, someone's favorite enemy in Bloodborne is the Winter Lantern. I guarantee you that is for true 100% fact. Not a single person, not one, is part of the Hateful Maggot fan club. Though I will say, Hateful Maggot would be an awesome name for a black metal band. Anyway, yeah, that's the list. That's the video. That's all I got. They are in order. Like, I genuinely think, like, 10, 9, 8. Like, I feel like they are in their right spots. But if you disagree with this list, or you disagree with any of the placements for any of the enemies on the list, post about it in the comments below. I'll be sure to read it, and then tell you to go fuck yourself. But seriously, please comment, please subscribe. I enjoy engaging with people on a regular basis. Also, again, I'm almost at 1,000 subscribers, and I'd really appreciate the support. Hey, thank you so much for watching. If you watched all the way to here, you know, you're the best person that I've ever met, named whatever your name is. It is currently, you know, 82 degrees inside of the house, but, you know, it's summer for you. I got nothing else. Y'all have a great rest of your night.